Hello friends, welcome back to my channel, and we are back with another complete or full course. So this will be a GitLab CI CD full course where you can become a hero from zero. So if you are a beginner, or if you want to have a crash course, so this will be a course of approximately 3 hours where we'll be talking about the complete GitLab CI CD topics. So without no further ado, don't have to waste much time, so let's get started on what will be covered in as part of this GitLab CI CD tutorial. So let's talk about the agenda. So we'll be talking about CI CD basics, what is continuous integration, what is continuous delivery, what is continuous deployment. So this will be the basic concept of CI CD, and we will be talking the difference CI versus CD versus and CD. So there are two CDs, continuous delivery and continuous deployment, right? And we'll also talk about GitLab CI CD basics, and then we'll move on to what is SSH, because secured shell is a little bit important here, because we need to create SSH key and you have to integrate with GitLab. So we'll talk about how to do all those CI CD SSH configurations, and we'll also talk about GitLab runners. So we in GitLab CI CD we have runners. So we will talk about GitLab runner and how to set up GitLab runner on Windows, and also how to install GitLab runner on Linux. So then once we have the basic setups ready, then we will move on to starting about GitLab CI CD. So we will see how to create the CI CD pipelines, the basics of that, and how to set up a different kind of pipelines in GitLab. We'll also see a project with Maven, so how to build a Maven project in GitLab CI CD pipeline. So in that Maven project, we'll be talking about Maven Lifecycle. We will also talk about how to use Docker in the CI CD pipeline, also talk about GitLab CI CD templates. We will also see what is Docker Registry, because when you use Docker in GitLab, you can use Docker Hub, or you can have different kind of registry. So in GitLab we have something called container registry, so we will talk about that and how to use that in the GitLab CI CD Docker build and pushing. So we'll see a complete tutorial on how to use GitLab CI CD pipeline to push a Docker image to GitLab container registry. Then we will also see GitLab Node.js CI CD pipeline, so that you'll see how we can deploy a Node.js application using GitLab CI CD as well. Then as some bonus videos, so that till that time we would have covered almost all the topic which you want to understand about GitLab CI CD. Now to give you some bonus topic, we will also have some discussion about Git versus GitHub versus and GitLab. So always there are confusion like what is Git, what is GitHub, what is GitLab. Okay, we'll also see how you can install your own GitLab on Docker, or if you want to set up on GitLab instance on CentOS. So all these things you will also cover. Now let's get started with the basics and CICD versus CD, and we will see how to get started with your GitLab topic. And don't skip this topic, watch till end of the video, so that you'll have a complete overview on GitLab CI CD. So you don't have to use Jenkins always, you can go for other alternatives like GitHub or GitLab CI CDs. So you can make use of this for end-to-end your CI to CD. So you will see the complete tutorial as part of this video. So like we have used Jenkins for a lot of continuous integration and continuous deployment. Now we can also use GitLab for that. So before let's starting on the GitLab part, this will be a completely basics tutorial where we'll be talking about CI/CD. We also will see about GitLab, how to create project, also how to make the basic preparation for the CI/CD. Okay, so we'll see some projects, some configuration in that. So to start with CI/CD, if you don't know, CI stand for continuous integration, whereas CD stand for continuous delivery, and also there is one more CD which is called continuous deployment. So we have to understand all these terminologies to know more about the CI/CD process, what we will do in GitLab. Okay, so when CI say it's continuous integration, then we have continuous delivery and continuous deployment. Now let's see about all these differences between CI, CD, and other CD. So what this all about? So in order to start, let's start with continuous integration. So as you know, like, why we do all these things is because we have a lot of developers now in the recent environments. What we will do is we have developers working on a code, right? And we'll have the source code in our Git repository, and we will have developers working on their own local repository, right? And so every developer will have a small part developed, and once they put into the main branch, it should not have issues, right? So that is where this continuous integrations come into the part. So in continuous integration, these developers merge their changes back to the main branch as often as possible. So what it does, it means like, there are developer A, B, C, D, so everybody have their own feature branches which they are working, and what they will do is they will merge back to the branch which is available for them, and then from there it will be merged to the main branch. But there will be a different upload process in that. But continuous integration, what will happen is these changes are validated by creating a build and running automated unit tests. So when these developers want to make these merges to their branch, what automatically what happens is it will start a build of that application, and it will do some unit test to make sure that it does not break the actual application. So the benefit of this is like, this continuous integration is all these are automated process. So this helps to avoid the integration challenges and check the application is not broken whenever a new commits are done. So as the statement says, right? So this automated continuous integration helps in the integration challenges, because multiple versions of code comes up, it will create a lot of integration issues at the end, right? So if you do these automated checks and the application is not getting broken, this will help them to have a proper process. Okay, so how it will happen in a pictorial way to represent, like you have a build, right? And from the build you have an automated unit test or integration testing which they will do it, and based on that it will do a merge, right? So that's how it happens in the continuous integration process. Now let's see about the continuous delivery. Okay, so when we talk about continuous delivery, it's an extension of continuous integration, okay, by which it automatically deploys all the code changes to a testing or staging environment. So in the continuous integration, we do all the integration parts to make sure that the application is not broken, but we are not deploying that code into any testing or staging or production environment, right? It is still kept aside. So what in continuous delivery, what we do is we will automatically deploy all those changes into a testing or staging environment. We don't do it to a production automatically, okay? But there are possibility, like you can stop in the automatic process at the staging environment, then the final production will be with a manual intervention. Okay, so that's continuous delivery. Now the goal of continuous delivery is to have a code base that is always ready for deployment for a production environment. What does means, like once you have a continuous delivery process in place, means you always whenever there is a change or some developer makes a code merge or checking, what happens is like it will do all these tests, automatic process test, build all these things, and then at the end you will have a code completely ready to be deployed in production. If you want, you can just click a button or just say yes, then it will get deployed to the production. So to just give it pictorial represent as we did for continuous integration, so you have build, unit test, and then merge. This would be the continuous integration part, right? Then if you after that you can do an automated acceptance test, and also you have a deployment to staging area, and but after that should be a manual process. The deployment to production should be a manual process. So that is the difference between continuous integration and continuous delivery. Now if moving on to continuous deployment, so this also it's a continuation of that. So what the difference is, every change that passes all stages of production pipeline will be released to the customer or production environment itself. So what happens, like when we shown about the pipeline where build, testing, staging, all those things are passed, what it will do is like it will also deploy to the production or customer environment automatically. So this is a completely automated process. There is no human intervention at all in this continuous deployment. So the whole process is automated, so there is no human intervention in this. So if it's a build stage, or if it's an unit test, or it's a merging, or it's, as we said, that's the continuous integration part, or it can be acceptance test, or deploying to staging area, and even to deploy to production, all are in an automated stage. So that is the continuous deployment. So the difference, as you see, between continuous integration, delivery, and deployment. So this is how it will look like. So like the pictorial representation we showed you, this will be for continuous integration, and if it's for a continuous delivery, it will be like this, where you have the production activity alone in the manual phase. But if you go for a continuous deployment, it should be like completely automated. So there is no human interventions. Completely all the stages are into the automated phase. So before I get into the real process with the GitLab and the CI/CD, I would request, like, if you are new to my channel, or if you have not subscribed to my channel, click on the subscribe button, and also like my video, share, and comment. Okay, let's now talk about the GitLab tutorial. So what we will do in this tutorial would be like, you understood now what is a CI/CD process. So what we will do is we'll be creating a GitLab project, and we'll upload some sample code there, and we'll also see what are some of the settings and also the requirement for a GitLab CI/CD pipeline configuration. So this will be a preparation phase, so it will be a step-by-step tutorial. So in this phase you will be able to understand what is a GitLab project, and also what are the settings, what is a GitLab runner. You also need to know what is the file which we have to create in a GitLab for CI/CD to be configured. All those things we will see in this tutorial. So let's get started. So I have my GitLab. It can be your own instance, which you can run it on some of your server, or it can be the SaaS instance from GitLab. Okay, so I have shown also one of my tutorial to how to set up GitLab on CentOS. You can follow that, and you can set up your own GitLab as well. So now if you see, you can see the projects here. So if I go to my projects, you can see these are the projects, right? And if you want to create a project, click on new project. Okay, and I'm going to use a blank project, and I'm going to give it name. So I'm going to give a name as test Maven project, and you can give a description as well. So I will type this is a test Maven Java project. Okay, and I'm going to keep this as private. If you want to keep it public, you can keep that as well, but since this is a testing project, I want to keep it as private. Then I will click on create. So now once you create, the project is created, but we don't have any data added, right? So now you can see these instructions. These all instructions we already seen in our tutorial for Git. So already, like, how to clone a project, how to do a commit, how to add the contents into the staging area, how to move that into the local repository, right? How to push that into the Git repository. All those things you should be knowing it, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just clone this project first. Okay, so I will just use this. So I have the git bash open, so you can see I don't have anything inside this folder. So I'm going to use the command which we use, git clone. Okay, so I'm just going to run that. So you can see we should have that project here. So I'm going to use test Maven project. Okay, and now you can see this name we have a master there, right? So what this means, like, we are inside the Git project. So if I go to my Git project, you should have the project here. Okay, but it's a blank project. Now what I want to do is I want to add some content. So I'm just going to paste some content here. Okay, this is a sample Java project. Okay, and if I go to the git bash and git status, you should be able to see, like, there are some untracked file, right? So I have to add git add, and then if I see git status, it should show like there are something which need to be commit, right? Then I will do a git commit, and the message initial commit. It can be any comment. Okay, so now you have the files added. So now what you need to do is you need to push that into the repository, right? So in order to push the repository, you have to use git push and -u origin master. Okay, so let's see what it does. So you can see it's done the push as well. So let me come back here, let me refresh this page. So now you can see all the contents are pushed here, right? So now our git repository is updated. So you have all the files over here. Now if you see, okay, you have different options like set up a CICD, add Kubernetes cluster. So and on the left side you have the project information, repositories, right, issues, merge requests, CICD, security, deployment. So the benefit of GitLab is it's a complete package. It's not like Jenkins where you need to have a lot of plugins to be installed, but you already have most of the features here itself. But in order to do this GitLab CI CD, one thing you should have is you should have a file called GitLab -ci.yaml. okay, that's the file similar to Jenkins file. You need to create a file inside this root location so that it will take that. So if you go to CICD, you will have options like you have to use the sample. If you want to use these templates, you have to create this file in order to start the pipeline. Otherwise you will not be able to do it, because all the whole definitions of our stages about the jobs and everything should be defined here. Okay, so that I will show you in the next tutorial, how to write this one, how to start some Jenkins the GitLab pipeline using this GitLab CI.yaml file. We'll start with small pipeline, then we will go with even Maven projects. So we'll do step by step. So but a few things which you need to do is we need to also have some settings to be done. So in CICD, if you go to the settings, you have something these settings like general pipeline, auto DevOps runners. So this runner is something which we need to set up. So this would be a separate tutorial where I'll be also showing how to set up runner. But there are also called shared runners. Okay, so but if you see, these runners are shared across GitLab instance, and they are free to use for public open source projects, but limited to 400 CI minutes per private project. Okay, so if it's a private project, you can only use it for 400 CI minutes. But you can also set up GitLab runner using some instructions. So I will show you that as well. So I would say we will do that in the upcoming tutorial, how to set up runner. So runner basically means that you should have some place to run the pipeline, right? So if you're running a Maven job, you need to have a setup where you have a system where you have Maven available, and you have to run those build command there, right? So that's the runner. So we'll also see in the upcoming tutorial how to set up runners for different scenarios. Whether it's a Windows runner, then we have to use PowerShell kind of commands. If it's a Linux, we can use shell, or if we can also use Docker, so that we can create Docker containers, and then some of the things like Maven and everything can run on the Docker container itself. And also something you need to do is you also need to set up an SSH for GitLab for connecting or pushing, pulling, all those things. So you need to have an authentication between your system and for your GitLab instance. That also we will see in the upcoming tutorial as a separate one, how to create SSH between your GitLab and your host machine. So you should not have any issues when pushing or pulling the content. Okay, otherwise you may get into issues like permission denied issues. So that also we will see it in the upcoming tutorial. Okay, so in the CICD section, you can see there are 4 sections like pipeline, editor, jobs, schedules, right? So basically pipeline is the word we'll be having all the job information. Let me show you a sample. Okay, I will go to one of my project. Okay, if I go to my Game of Life project, and if I go to my pipeline, you can see I have a few pipeline here, right? Some of most of them has failed, some of them I have cancelled, right? And similar way, if I go to my other project, which is for first project, right? If I go to the pipeline, you can see, I have a few projects passed, right? And some of them has failed. And you should be able to see the jobs here. So if I go to the job, you should be able to see the whole thing. Okay. And you can also see how the jobs works, and all those features you should be able to see, like finished, right? And all tags. Okay. So all those things you should be able to see it in this CICD section. If I go to one of these past pipeline, you can see I have a different stages like build, test, deploy, right? And there are different jobs. So all those things we will see how to create in the upcoming tutorial, but I just wanted to show you, like, these are some prerequisites which you should know for creating this pipeline. Okay, so you can see I have one gitlab.ci.yaml file, right, which I'm using it. So similar way, we will create the gitlab-ci.yaml file, and also will write down the content of the file to create this build jobs. So as I discussed previously, like what we will do in the next tutorials of this CICD tutorial will be, we'll have to set up SSH in GitLab for authentication between your system and GitLab. So we will see that how to do that. We'll also see how to do an installation and configuration of GitLab runner. So we can do it on Windows GitLab Windows runner as well, also as on Linux side. So we'll see both scenarios, okay? Because in Windows we probably mostly use the PowerShell commands, whereas in the Linux we can use other kind of shell and Docker, those kind of commands, okay? And we'll also see how to create GitLab pipeline and run the pipeline, which I showed you some samples in the upcoming tutorial. So please keep watching for more videos on GitLab. So this will be a really interesting tutorial, and like what we use for Jenkins and all those kind, we'll do all those kind of integration with GitLab as well. This tutorial is a simple tutorial where we'll be setting up SSH for GitLab. So if you don't know what is SSH, SSH is also known as secured shell, and secured shell or SSH is a network protocol that enables two computers to communicate. So what we do is, as part of this is this is a basics requirement to have your CICD setup for GitLab. So you need to configure the SSH between the GitLab and your computer, okay? So this will allow you to have a secured way to access your computer over unsecured network. So that is the basic reason for SSH. So how to set up SSH key in GitLab? So what we will do in this tutorial is we'll create an SSH key in the Windows machine, and we will copy that SSH key to the GitLab settings so that we can authenticate between GitLab and this computer. Okay, so before I get into the actual process, I would request you to subscribe to my channel if you haven't subscribed, or just click on the subscribe button, or if you're new to my channel, and you can like the video, share, and give your comments. So what you want to do is, like, you can log into your GitLab account, or if you have a own instance, you can log into that and you'll be able to see your project. So what you need to do is you need to go to your settings, or you should have a preference over here. So you just click on preference. Okay, so if you see settings, you can click on that and you should get these options. And here, if you see, you will have an SSH key, so you can click on it. And if you see what SSH key says, SSH key allows you to establish a secured connection between your computer and GitLab. Okay, and to add, you need to generate a SSH key. Okay, and then you can copy that content over here. So how to generate? So you can open your git shell, or you can also use your command prompt. Okay, so I'm using the git bash here. So what I will do is I will just type this command, SSH keygen. So it's a simple command. You just run SSH keygen, and you can see it is creating a key pair into this location .ssh folder, and you can just press enter. If you want to give some names, you can give, but I'm just keep pressing enter on it. So now you can see it has created a file. So you can see a public key has been saved as id_rsa.pub, right? So that's the key generator for this machine. So I need to go to that location now. So if I go to my Windows machine and go to this .ssh folder, you should be able to see this id_rsa and id_rsa.pub. So what you need to do is you just need to open this file. Okay, so I will open with the notepad. So you'll be getting some contents like this. You just need to copy this content and go to your GitLab where we have went to this SSH key. Just paste this. You can just give a title. So GitLab desktop, okay, something you can give, and if you want, you can give an expiry date for this key, and just you have to click on add keys. So now you can see this key has been already added, so you should be having this set up correctly, right? So if you go to the SSH key now, you should be able to see one of the SSH key added here. So it's a pretty simple process. You just need to run that SSH keygen in your machine which you want to authenticate with GitLab, and you just need to copy here and just run it. So just save it. So you'll have this SSH key configured. So that's a pretty simple process, right? So why we need this? This will be one of requirement, because when you try to git clone or git push, you may see some authentication problem like permission issues which you may face. So if you have this SSH configured, then you will not face those problems. Okay, so this will is a basic requirement. We are doing it, so in the upcoming tutorials when we do this runners and other configuration, we don't face any problems. So just to reiterate, I'm just telling, like, you just go here to preference, go to SSH key, just copy and paste the key here. And how to generate, you just need to run SSH keygen. If you are using a Linux machine, it's also the same command. You can also use putty or command prompt on Windows machine. You can run it from there as well. Okay, so I hope it's a pretty simple tutorial. So this will be a continuation of GitLab CI CD tutorial for beginners, and in the previous tutorial we have seen the basics of CI CD, continuous integration, continuous deployment, continuous delivery, right? And we also seen how to set up SSH in GitLab. So this will tutorial, in this tutorial we will talk about GitLab runner. So GitLab runner is one of a key topic which you need to understand to run CI/CD in GitLab. Okay, so to give some information on GitLab runner, so GitLab runner is an application that picks up and executes the CI/CD jobs which you run on GitLab. So you can compare this to Jenkins. Probably if you have used Jenkins, you may see Jenkins nodes, right, where you run the jobs from Jenkins. So similar way you can consider GitLab runner is a place where you run the jobs. Okay, so GitLab runner is basically you set up with an application which you on the machine which you want to act as a host to run this job. So it's an open source component, GitLab runner. Okay, and there are two type of runner. One is like a specific runner which we can configure for specifically for the project, and there are also shared runners which comes along with the GitLab. So there are some restrictions which we will talk what is that shared runners. Okay, and the other point which you want to understand, like GitLab runner, you can install this GitLab runner on any kind of operating system, whether it's a Windows or Linux, or it can be run even inside a Docker container. So that's some basic information on GitLab runner. We will see more about on the GitLab side. So let's move on to some more important information. So in this tutorial what we will do is we will be setting up GitLab runner on Windows machine. Okay, so what the steps we will be doing is we will have to download the GitLab runner binary file, then we have to register the runner, and we have to install the runner as a service and start it. So then you will be able to see the runner is configured in the GitLab, so you can make use of the runner to run your CI/CD jobs. So before we get into the actual demo process, I would request you, like, if you're new to my channel or if you haven't subscribed to my channel, click on the subscribe button to get the more videos, and also like my videos, share and comment. So let's get started with our actual demo on how this setup is done for GitLab Runner. So before let me also show you some information. So these are some of the project which I have it in the GitLab. So if you don't know how to create a project, please check my previous tutorial where we have shown you how to create project and how to push through git commands. Okay, so let me open a simple project, which is my first GitLab project, where you can see I have already run some pipeline build. So if I go to settings, and there is an option called CICD. So there are two CICD. One is over here, which is for pipeline, jobs, and editor. If you go to settings, we have a CICD option, right? So just click on that, and there are quite some options here, and there is a tab for runners, right? So you can see the runners are the process that picks up and execute the CI/CD job for GitLab, right? So how to configure it, that is what we are going to see. Now if you expand this, now you can see you can register as many runners as you want, right? And there are active and pause states, and there are two kind of runners which we spoke, like specific runners and shared runners. So these specific runners are specific to this project, and these shared runners are shared across GitLab instance. Now here, if you see this shared runner is disabled, so usually by default it will be enabled. I have disabled it. So if you have to use shared runners, one thing you have to be understood is like these are free to use for public open source project, limited to 400 CI minutes per month. Okay. For a private project, so 400 CI minute is allowed for your private project, but if it's open or public project, you can make use of that as well. So you can see the runners, you have different kind of runners which is already in active states over here. But if you see, what we are going to do is like we are going to set up a specific runner in this. Okay, so we have to make use of Windows machine, and you'll be able to see a runner added over here. Okay, so you will be using this token for it. So that's why I just showed you, like we need this location, and we need to make use of this runner. So the runners are configured specific to project. Okay, so it's not like you just set up a runner and it's used for all project basically. So you need to register it specifically using the project token, so you can just do that. Now the step, I will link this documentation also into the video description, where it's talking about how to install GitLab Runner for Windows. So first thing what you need to do is we need to create a folder name, in the name of GitLab. So it's not mandatory that it has to be in that name. So as per the documentation, it says GitLab Runner, and you need to download this binary file. Now if you see, I have already downloaded this binary file. Okay, and I have to rename this as GitlabRunner.exe. So I'm just going to rename this file. Okay, so let me just rename this to GitlabRunner.exe. So this part is done, and now we need to register the runner, and also we need to start the runner as service. So you need to open a command prompt as administrator. So in the elevated stage, so you just need to open a command prompt, and let's go to this folder. So let me go to the folder. So it called cd git lab runner. Okay, and you can see, sorry, since I have used all these commands in Linux, that's coming up here as well. So you can see the file over here, right? GitlabRunner.exe. So in order to register the GitLab runner, what you need to do is you need to run a command like GitlabRunner.exe register, and then it will ask you to enter some information. So I'm just going to copy this, and I'm going to run this command over here. Okay, GitLab runner and register. So now you can see it's asking you to enter some details. So enter the GitLab instance URL. So what you need to do is you just need to copy this content and just paste it the same thing, because we are using the GitLab. This is the same URL which we are going to use. If you are using a internal hosted URL which is in the different URL, you need to give that, and you need to enter the registration tokens which will be coming from this page, okay, where we went to settings and CICD and we went to runners, right? So I'm just going to copy this and I'm going to paste this registration token, and you can enter some description for this runner. So I will just put Windows machine, okay, and some tag. So the tags mean you can use these tags when you're running the jobs. So tags will help you to make sure that, you know, when you run the job, it can check, okay, this tag is mapped to this runner, so you run this job on this runner. So I will put like a PowerShell maybe, right, and Windows, I'll just put some tags over here. And you know, you can also put some executors here, so similar like, you know, you have a Docker, you know, a shell. So I will just put shell here. Okay, so you can see the runner is registered. So now let me come here and refresh this page, and let me expand the runners again. Now you see like we have a runner available here, right? So but the runner is still in a disabled or not connected stage. So we have added the runner. Now we have to start the runner. So in order to start the runner, you need to follow these steps. You need to install and you need to start. So let's just go back to the screen, and let's call the GitLab runner, and you need to install it. Okay, so now we can see it's runtime. It has already completed that, and we need to start it. Okay, so now the runner is started as well. So let me go back to this CICD screen and let me just refresh it. Okay, let me expand the runners again. Now we can see the runner is active, so that means the runner is ready, and now you should be able to use this runner for running your CI/CD job. So you can also see, you know, the tags which we have used, PowerShell, Windows. So these tags will be helpful, like when you create the jobs, you can tell, like, you know, this job has to be running on the machine which you're using these tags. So that was a pretty simple process, right? So it's a very pretty simple process to set up the runner, and you will also see in the upcoming tutorial how to set up runner on Linux, and also how to make use of runner as a Docker container. So you can create jobs where we can create images for a specific application which on Docker containers, and then we can run those applications. So we'll show all these things in the upcoming tutorial. Now here in this case, now the runner is running. Now if you want to stop it, you can use stop command, and that should be done. So if you refresh it back, let me go back and expand the runner. Yeah, I think we should remove it from here as well, and we need to stop also uninstall the service. So you can uninstall it from here if you want to remove the runner. Now you can see it has been removed as well, and you can just remove it from here as well. So once you remove it, the runner will be removed from the machine, so it will not be running in the specific runner. If you want to run the CI/CD job on your shared runners, you need to keep this enable shared runner for this project. Okay, so these are some settings which you need to be aware about the runner for GitLab. So basically, you can, as I said, you can compare runner as a place where the job has to be running. So general to Jenkins, you should use like some nodes, slaves, machines, which you will use it to run the jobs. The same setup, I would say, like when we are talking about runner in GitLab. So if you have seen the previous tutorial, we spoke about GitLab runner, right? So how to set up GitLab runner on Windows, and in this tutorial we are going to see how to set up GitLab runner on a Linux CentOS machine. Okay, so if you already know how to set up GitLab runner, you can just skip it. So I will be continuing with the next tutorial, so you can go to that directly. So just to give a recap for those who don't know what is a GitLab runner, So GitLab Runner is an application that picks up and executes the CI/CD job for GitLab. So it's more like a slave machine, which we use it in Jenkins, or nodes, which we call it in Jenkins, right, where the jobs will be running. So it's an open source software. GitLab Runner is an open source software, so you can use it and install it. And there are two kind of runners which I showed you. Like there is something called specific runners and shared runners, right? So the specific runners are specific to the project which we set up, like now what we are doing using a Linux machine. Their shared runners is coming from the GitLab itself, so when you run a CI/CD job, it can take the shared runner as well. And you can run this, install the GitLab Runner on different operating system like Windows, what we are doing now for Linux, or you can even run inside a Docker container. So to give you details on GitLab Runner installation on Linux, so what we will be doing is we'll be downloading the GitLab Runner binary file. So there are different ways, but we'll be using the binary files, and we'll create a GitLab user and then install the runner. We'll also install the runner as a service and then start it, and then we'll register the runner. So once you register, you'll be able to see the active status of the runner on the GitLab job. So that will be the overall process. So we'll get into the demo directly now. So before I get into the demo, I would request you, like if you are new to my channel, or if you haven't subscribed to my channel, I would say click on the subscribe button and also press on the bell icon, so you'll be notified when I submit new videos. Okay, so also I would request like you click on the like, share and comment, so that more and more people will be benefited by these tutorials. So to get started to the demo, I will have few projects in GitLab. So I have showed you, like in the previous tutorial, for GitLab Runner on Windows. So where you can see is once you go to the project, you have CICD, and you also have a CICD here. So this CICD is for more of the creating pipeline. You have to go to settings and go to the CICD, and you will be having something called runners, right? So if you expand the runner, you have two options. One is specific runner and shared runner. So I have disabled my shared runners, so that these jobs which is running, or the CICD job on this project, it will not be running on the shared runner. So the shared runners, it's completely free for open source project, or there is a limit like 400 CI minutes for the private project. So these options we will be using, like the token and everything, to register, and I'll be following this documentation for installing on Linux machine. So there are different ways. I said you can use multiple ways to install it, using a RPM package, or .deb package, or you can also use a binary file. So what we are going to use is we are going to use a binary file. Then we have to give some permissions. We have to create a user, CI user, then install a service and start the runner, and then you need to register. So in order to register the runner, you have to run some command, and I will just show you all those things. So let me get started. So I have this machine, okay, which is a Linux CentOS machine, and this CentOS machine I also have a Docker installs. Why? Because in this machine I'm going to set up this runner, and also the benefit is, like since I have a Docker install, when I create the GitLab images or GitLab pipeline, I'll be specifying some images so that you can create containers on this machine. Okay, so for example, I want to run Maven build. I'll be setting up an image for Maven, and I will run that CI/CD pipeline. So I don't have to set up Maven here in the CentOS machine. It will create a Maven image, and then it will use the Maven image, and it will create a container for the Maven, and it will do those activities. So we will see all those things. That's why I have a Docker also set up on this machine. So let me get started with the commands. So the first thing is, like, we need to download the GitLab runner. So as I said, I'm using the binary file, so you just need to run this command, which is already available in that documentation, which I will link into this video description, so you can just have a look there. So it's almost like a 53.6 megabyte file. So let's just wait for that to be downloaded. Okay, so the download is completed, and it's downloaded under this location /user local bin GitLab runner. So if you go to /user /local /bins, and you should be able to see the GitLab runner. And now we need to give the permissions for that. So let me just run that command to give the permission. So you need to run the chmod and you need to give that location for the file. So now if you see this has been made green, so because it has got a complete permission now. So the next step is like we are going to create a user called GitLab runner. So then we'll see how to make use of that to register and install the runner. Okay, so that is done. So next step is like we need to install this GitLab runner as a service. So what we are going to do is we are going to run this command GitLab runner install / and you're going to use this user to run it, and the directory should be here. So we need to make some changes in this command, because if you run it without this /, it will not detect the GitLab runner exe. It's not an exe, sorry, it's the GitLab runner executable. Okay, so you have to use this command. Okay, so then you have to run it. So if you run it, so it will create give you this output. Okay, and the next step is we need to start the runner, right? So you need to again run this command sudo GitLab runner and start. So if you run it, then the GitLab runner is started as well. So next step is like we need to register the runner. Okay, so for registering the runner, you need to run another command. So it's pretty simple command. It's almost the same as start, but you need to change it to register. So you're going to call this GitLab runner executable, and then you have to go to run the register. So once you run the register, you'll be getting some prompt where you need to enter some information. So since we are using the GitLab as the the instance URL, if you are using your own URLs, you have to give that. So I'm just going to run gitlab.com and I'm going to run it. Now we need to enter as registration token, and this registration token is under the settings where we showed CICD, and you need to expand the runner, and you need to copy this registration token, and you need to enter that. Then you can give some description for this runner. So I will just make it as Linux, and then you can give some tags. So I will again give Linux and Docker. Okay, so the tags will be useful for you when you run some pipeline, where you can mention this pipeline has to be running on this tagged runners. Okay, so now you need to run some executors here. So I'm going to use Docker as well here, and I'm going to use shell. Okay, so let me run that. Okay, so I think there is some problem with this executor, so let me just run with shell. Yep, so it's added. So we are done from that part. So let me clear it, and let me go back here, and I'm going to refresh this runner. Okay, and I'm going to expand the runner. Now you can see we have this runner added, right, and it's green because it's online now. So now once you create this pipeline job, it will be able to run it on this runner. You can add multiple runners as well. Okay, so but I know in this case I'm adding only the Linux runner now. So last tutorial I showed you how to set up Windows runner as well. So, and that's the overall process we wanted to do. Like we just want to set up the runners. So we will be making use of these runners in the upcoming tutorial. So the whole agenda of this tutorial is step-by-step process how you complete the CI/CD using GitLab. So now we are done with the runners registrations and setting up. So now next tutorial we'll be doing how to create the jobs, CI/CD job, how to write the GitLab -ci.yaml file where we'll be creating stages and also the jobs. And now in this tutorial we will start with the CI/CD pipeline, how to create pipeline. Okay, so what we will do in this tutorials, we'll just have a relook on the basics of CI/CD. So I will just give a quick recap on that. Then we will see how to create your own CI/CD pipeline in GitLab. So when we say about CI/CD pipeline, we will talk about GitLab-ci.yaml file, and also jobs, what are the jobs in pipeline, and also different kind of stages. So there are more about the CI/CD pipeline, like tags, there are artifacts, there are a lot of things which we can do, but we will start simply a simple project with the job stages and how a pipeline will look like. Then we will add up in the section one by one. Okay, so to get started with the CI/CD basics, So if you have seen my previous tutorial, we spoke about this concept, right? So CICD stands for continuous integration, CI stands for continuous integration, and CD can be continuous delivery, or it can be continuous deployment, right? So I have explained you what it means. So if you see like continuous integration, it have a build and then a test and the merge, right? So for example, we have different kind of developers is working on a project, and they have their own feature branches. They are working on their code, and they will commit their changes on the code. So it can start an automatic build job to integrate those changes. Then it can do a small unit test, and if it passes, it can merge those code changes. So that would be the continuous integration, and all should be automated. Then if you talk about continuous delivery, so this will be the different phases, or how it look like in continuous delivery. Like after your continuous integration, we will have an acceptance test, which will be an automated one, and we will be also deploying our application to a staging area. So the difference is like we are stopping the automated process till staging area, and we are not having the automated process to deploy to production. So the deployment to production will be a manual step, like we need to confirm from our end so that it can be deployed to the production. So this will be the continuous delivery process. Now when we talk about continuous deployment, the whole process will be automated. So what means, like, as soon as you make some changes in your application, the whole process will be automated, and the new version will be deployed into the production. So that's a basic information of CI/CD. If you have not seen my previous tutorial, I would say like have a look on that. I will link the video description, also the link for that video, so you can have it in the video description. So now let's get started to the actual demo on that. So before I get into the actual demo on the project and how to create the CI/CD pipeline, I would request you like click on the subscribe button if you have not done yet, or you're new to my channel, and also I would request you to like my videos, share and comment. So we are in the GitLab page. Okay, so there are a few projects. So I'm not going to use those projects. That you can see I have some Maven project, Java project, Node project. We will see all those things in the upcoming tutorials. So for this tutorial, I'm just going to create a new project. Okay, it's going to be a simple blank project, and I'm just going to call it as test GitLab CI CD. Okay, and I'm going to keep this as private because I'm doing this for all this testing and learning. So to show you do all this testing and making those changes, which I don't want to make it a public for everyone because it's just a sample project. So I will create the project. Okay, so once you create the project, you can see we are inside the project, and we spoke about in the previous tutorial like what is the CI/CD section for. In the settings, we have a CI/CD where we spoke about runners, right? And we have different kind of runners, shared and specific runners. And in this tutorial, I'm not going to use a specific runner. I'm going to use the shared runner. So I'm going to keep this enabled. But we will be seeing how to make use of the specific runner also in the upcoming tutorial. Like we'll add our own Docker runners. We'll also add our runners to run Maven builds. So, or Windows runners for running PowerShell scripts. All those things we will see. But this is a beginning tutorial, so I want to keep it with the shared runner. Now what I'll go to the project. So in order to have GitLab CI CD, what the basic requirement is, like we need to have a file called gitlab-ci.yml. It's not YAML, it's just YML. Okay, so you have to be very clear about that. So this is a blank project. There is nothing, but if it can be any project, any GitLab project. We need to have this gitlab-ci.yml file. So I will create this file first, so you can see this will be the syntax or the name gitlab-ci.yml. So if you put YAML, it will not work. And you also have different option to use templates. So different application templates you can use, like C++ share for Docker. There are different templates you can use, whichever is used. For example, npm, it will give you some templates like how you using node deploy and all those things. So I'm not going to use any of this. I'll just delete it. Okay, so I'm not going to apply any template. Now the basic thing in CI/CD pipeline is like you will have jobs, right? And you'll have stages as well. So what we will do is we will just write some jobs. So I'm going to use job 1. Okay, and the basic requirement for a job is like you need to have a script. So I will run a script, and I'm going to echo it as this is a first sample job. Okay, so that's the basic requirement. You should have this will be your job name, and this will be your script under which whatever is there it will be running. So let me commit this change. Now you can see it's valid. If I go to CICD and pipeline, you should see like there is running, right? And if I click on it, you can see there is job 1, right, which is running. If I click on the job 1, it will show you like the process which is running, and it says job succeeded. So now if I go back to the pipelines again, now you can see it's passed, right? And if I click on it, you can see the job name is job 1, but you can see here it's called test, right? So this is a stage. So by default, if you don't give any name for any jobs under which stage it should be running on the test stage. Let's go back to the editor. Okay, you can go back to the editor. I will just copy this whole content. Now I will run it, put the job 2. So I will make this a sample job 1 and this sample job 2. Okay, so now we have job 1 and we have job 2, and both runs these contents under script. So let me commit this. So as soon as you make the commit, it will check the GitLab configuration. It will start the pipeline. Okay, so if any changes you make it in the GitLab project, it will start the pipeline. So if I go back to the pipeline, it's running. If I click on it, now you can see there are 2 jobs, but both are clustered under the same stage, and it's running CD parallel, right? So you can run 2 projects parallelly. So it's not like this job will complete and this will run it on the after it. So now there will be scenarios, right, where you have a build process to be running first, then after the build you have to run the test, then maybe after a test you have to run the deploy. So if you don't define the stages, all the jobs will run parallelly. So that may not be the actual requirement you need, right? So let's go back to the editor. So what you can do is, I will go to the top and I will put like stages. Okay, and I'll put as build as one stage. Okay, I'll put build as stage, and then I will put test as another stage, and then I will put deploy. Okay, so now we have 3 stages defined. Okay, now what we can do is we can segregate, or we can attach our jobs into the stages. So I will put stage here, and I will put this will be under stage build. Okay, so this should be under stage build. Okay, so stage build, I will change the job into build job. Okay, and I will change the content to build job. Okay, so this will be the stage 1. Okay, now I can put the stage 2 here. It should be test, so I will map this job to test. So I will change this will be a test job. Okay, so the job name will be build job here. This will be clubbed into the stage build, and this will be a test job which will be clubbed into the test build. I will just copy this same content. See, this is a very simple pipeline. Okay, because we are just trying to understand what is stage, what is a job, what is the script, right? So don't worry about the content and the script, that we can change it based on our new projects, right? So let's change this to deploy job. Okay, and I'm going to put this to deploy. So, and let me change, this would be test job, and this should be deploy job. Okay, so now what we did is like we defined 3 stages. Okay, build, test, and deploy, and we are mapping our jobs into each stage, right? So this will be a build stage, this should be under test stage, and this should be deploy stage. Now let me commit this. Again, it's checking the GitLab configuration. If there is any syntax issues, it will show you like it's not a right one. Let's go back to the pipeline. Now you can see it's running, and if I expand it now, you can see we have 3 stages. One is build, another one is test, another one is deploy, right? So once the build job is completed, the test job is started, and once the test job is completed, it will start the deploy job. So that's how it will be now because of different stages. So let's see what is there. So if you go inside, you can see it's completed. If I go back, you can see deploy job is running now once the test job is completed, right? So it's going in the phase ways, like it complete one job at a time, and then it will go to the next stage, right? So now what will as we said, what is the case, like I have 2 different tasks which need to be running on the same test. So let's go back to our editor. Now inside the test, I want to put one more job. Okay, so I will just copy this content, and I will just make this as test job 1, and this will as test job 2. Okay, so now what happened is this job 1 and job 2 both are mapped to the stage test. Okay, what it means, like these 2 things will be clubbed under the same stage, and it can run parallelly. So let's commit the change, go back to our pipeline. Things still updating. Yes, it's running now. So if I go back to the pipeline, now do you see, like under test we have 2 jobs, test job 1 and test job 2, both are running parallelly, but this deploy has not started yet. So that is the stages and jobs in GitLab. So this is a very useful, and that's how you should write your code. You have to understand what has to run, or serial and parallel, so you can define your jobs. Like this should be my first job. I should be completed first in the build section, then it has to move to the test, then it has to move to the deploy. Now you can see all the job has completed, right? So it has used the whole job to running. It's used our shared runners. So you can see it as using these runners, which is from GitLab runner, and it's using some Docker image. So but we will see in the upcoming tutorial, like how to make use of the runners from our system. Like we can make use of our Windows machine, or we can make use of Linux, where we have Docker, and we can run Docker images for Maven or Node.js or those applications. I have planned for all those things in the upcoming tutorial. We'll create a pipeline for different kind of builds. So now you see, like we have pipeline section here, we have editor where we were trying to edit the content of our gitlab.yaml file. We have jobs which we'll be listing here, like how many jobs we have run. We have schedules where we can create schedules as well of the pipeline. So that's the details which I wanted to show you in this tutorial. I hope you understood like what is stages, what is jobs, and what is the script, what we are running inside the script. So that's a simple tutorial to give you the basics of CI/CD pipeline in GitLab. So we will see more complex things in the upcoming tutorial. So in this tutorial we are going to learn about GitLab CI/CD for a Maven project. So what we will need as a requirement for this project, like if you're new to CI/CD a Maven project, what we need to have it, you need to have a GitLab account. So if you don't know how to create, please check my previous tutorial. And you'll also need a Java project which will be used to build using Maven. And you also need a GitLab runner, so you can use a specific runner or you can use shared runners in GitLab. So in this tutorial we'll focus on shared runners, so you may not have to do a setup of runner yourself, but we will see that in the upcoming tutorial as well. But if you don't know how to set up GitLab runner, you can check my previous tutorial, which I will link into this video description. And you also need to have an understanding on Maven Lifecycle, which I will also show you in the upcoming slides. So you need to have understanding like what are the different lifecycle of Maven. So when you build the pipeline, you need to give which stage you want to deploy. So also we will write the GitLab CI pipeline file, which is will be like .gitlab-ci.yaml file. We will see how to write the complete CI YAML file. So what we'll do in this GitLab CI CD Maven project, we'll be also using Docker. So we don't set up Maven to install on some runner and do that. So what we will do is we'll use the Docker specific runner, and we will create a Maven build in Docker containers. So to give some information about Maven Lifecycle, so these are some lifecycle stages in Maven, like validate, initiate. There are a few like compile, test, compile, package, verify, install, deploy. So there are different stages in Maven Lifecycle. So you can define which stages you want in your pipeline. So we will see what we will do in our tutorial. So what we will do is we will do using a Maven image. So we are going to use Docker image, and we will create 4 stages. One will be for build, one will be for test, and one will be for package, and one will be for deploy. So this will be 4 stages we will be creating in our pipeline, and we will see how we can run those pipelines so the Maven can build, and the whole source will be created. So also what we will also see in this tutorial, like how to cache. So we'll also see how caching mechanism happen in GitLab. So we will cache .m2 repository, which where the Maven files will be stored, and also the target folder where once you build or package your application or install it, you will have a jar or war file which will be saved under the target folder. So this caching will help us to increase your speeding up the whole process of your pipeline. So we will see all those things in the actual demo. So before I get into the actual demo process, I would request you, like if you're new to my channel or if you have not subscribed to my channel, click on the subscribe button. Also like my videos, share and comment. So I'm in GitLab, and you can see I have a Java project. Okay, so there is a source file, and you have a pom.xml. So if you don't know how to set up all those things, then you have to learn pom.xml, how it is that written, how the Java project works. So but you can use this project for your testing. So I will give this link into the video description, so you can go and have a look there. So now we don't have this gitlab-ci.yaml file which we will create. So before that, I just want to show you a basic gitlab-ci.yaml file which we are going to use. So we are going to start with image, and we are going to use a Maven image for this tutorial. So because this is a Java project, and we are going to build your project using Maven. So rather than installing Maven on your machine and using that runner, I'm going to use a Docker container. So you are going to use Maven image to create a container. And as I mentioned in the previous slides, I'm going to have 4 stages. So we have spoke about stages and job in GitLab CI pipeline, right? So we are going to define 4 stages, and each job will be mapped to some stage. So you can have multiple jobs also in the same stage. So here I'm going to use build job, and I'm going to use the stages build. And what this tag refers is, like, this tag is to inform GitLab CI to run this job on a runner which is having a tag Docker. So in runners, you can have, when you create runners, you can tag them with some keywords like Docker or Maven or shell. So you can define this job has to be running on this runner. So I'm defining it as a Docker. So I want some runners which have a Docker install. So I'm going to tag it like that. And I'm going to give a message that this is not a mandatory, but just for information. I put like Maven compile started, and the build stage I'm going to run mvn compile. So mvn is the Maven command, and the compile is the lifecycle stage. So that's what I showed you, like different lifecycle is there. So build, I'm going to compile it, and in the test job I'm going to use test stage. And again, the tag is Docker, and the script I'm going to run mvn test. So here I'm going to run the test lifecycle of Maven. And the package, I'm going to use package stage, and here I'm going to run a mbn package. So when you do a mbn package, you will have a jar file which will be created and it will be saved under your repository target folder. Okay, so in order to deploy, you need to have some kind of method, like you need to deploy it to your artifactory or some locations. So in our case, we are not going to see that deployment side, so because of that I just created a job as deploy, and I'm just going to print a message alone. So we will see about this, how to deploy your jar file or Maven things into a artifactory repository or something in the upcoming tutorial. So this one I want to start as a basic, where you can create different lifecycle as a stages of Maven. Now in order to enhance this one, I have also updated some other parameter as well. So I'm going to do is I'm going to set a variable called Maven OPTS, and this will be the local repository, which will be .m2 repository, right? So I want to back up this repository, so because of that I have to set this variable, and I'm going to use cache. So cache means I'm going to cache this path into some repository. Since we are running shared runners, it will be saved under some Google Cloud or some default GitLab repositories. So we are going to set the path which has to be cached is .m2 repository, and also the target where your jar file will be saved. So the benefit, as I mentioned, like it will speed up the process, so it can call up this repository in the next job. So once you run the build, if there are, this can be used for other job and other job as well. So the rest of the part is going to be same. So what we have added is we have added the cache, and also we have added the variables for that. So if you don't have this variable set where it is mentioned as local repo is m2 repository, this caching will not work. So let me just copy this, okay, and I will create a new file here, and I'm going to call this as .gitlab. And see, whatever we are going to put, you can also see the template. If you search for Maven, so let's search for Maven, so you can also select some template from here. So you can see the default GitLab template. You see it gives you some variables set here, right? So it's using some image Maven. I'm using latest image. You can see it also has cached m2 repository. It's using some stage called verify, stage for test, and it's going to do the life cycle like MVN verify. And I think it's deploy. You can see it's deploying something to some location. So it's using to GitLab some repository. So you can read through that as well. But in our case, we are going to delete this, okay, and we are going to apply this pipeline, CI pipeline job we just written. Okay, so there are different stages and different jobs. So let's just commit that. So let me go and commit. So once you commit, you should have a pipeline started. So you can see the pipeline has started. So you can just click on it, and you can check. If you click on the job, it should be showing the details what it's running. So now it's preparing the Docker environment. You can see this tag called Docker. So this is running on a runner which is having tagged with Docker. You can see that this job has completed. So if I go to the top, you can see it has completed the whole process of Maven, right? Compile started, and it's started MVN compile, right? So that's the message. So you can see it has done the complete process of MVN compile, and you can also see it has created a cache for M2 repository. And if you see target, also it has created, right? So, and it's saved under some Google storage.google API, right? So that's how it is done for the first stage. Let's see for how it's happening. So you can see the other stages are running now. So now the test job is also completed. So let's go to the package job. Now we can see it's waiting for the package job to run. Maybe we can just go back to our pipeline, and let me go to the test job. It's passed, right? So you can click on that. Now if you go to the top, you can see now, the first steps it's doing, like it's downloading the cache. So the first in stage, one job, we have created a cache for M2 repository and also the target, right? So it is copying those things now for this job. So you can run the MVN test, and you can see it has done the whole process here. You can see build success, right? So that's all for that job. So let's see what it happens for whole pipeline now. So you can see we are in the deploy stage. The package is also passed, so you can check the package job. You can see it has updated that as well. So you can see building jar, right? So it has created the jar file and it's under the target folder. So you can see this one is also completed. Now you can see the whole pipeline is passed. So you can see whole job. You can see build, task, package, deploy, all jobs are completed. So we have 4 jobs, right? It's all running on Docker, right? And it's running on different actually runners, right? I think so. So let's see. It's also to show you like how much time it has taken to run, and so that's all I think from this pipeline section. So if you want to edit, you can go to editor and you can make some edit here for the CI file. You can see the jobs alone here. You can see the schedules. So we don't have a schedule, test cases, right? So you can see all this information from here. So just to give you a recap, like this is the let me go to the editor. So this will be your GitLab-CI.yaml file. So you can if you're looking for a pipeline file for a Maven project using Docker containers, this would be the best. If you don't want to use Docker container, you can remove this section, because I'm setting a default image Maven, and you can build this, but you should have Maven and other components installed on your runner. Okay, so that should be the whole process. So in this tutorial, we are going to talk about GitLab Container Registry. So you may be wondering, what is a GitLab Container Registry? I would recommend you to check my previous tutorial where we have spoke about what is a Docker registry. So Docker registry, what does this means? Like it's a place where we will store our Docker images and we will distribute it. So the classic example is a hosted registry, which is our Docker Hub, right? So I hope everybody has worked on Docker will be knowing what is a Docker Hub, or from where we download our images, right? And in my previous tutorial, we have also shown how to set up a local registry. So you can set up your own registry on your machine using registry containers, and you can store your images in that, and you can use that to distribute it to other Docker machines, right? So we have seen that also. If you have not seen, just look into my previous tutorial, and I will link that into this video description as well. So when we spoke about hosted registry, we told like Docker Hub is one of our hosted registry where we can download images. And in this tutorial, we will see how we can use GitLab Container Registry as a hosted registry. So you can save your images into the GitLab Container Registry, and then you can use it for distributing to other Docker machines, or you can pull it, or you can use those images to create containers. So that's what we are going to talk about in this tutorial. So this complete tutorial, we will see like a few steps how to make use of this GitLab Container Registry. So we will see where you will be able to see how to enable that if you don't have that in your GitLab project. And also we will talk about how to log into GitLab Container Registry using Docker command. So there are different ways you can use username, password, or you can use personalized token. So we will see how to create those things. And also we will talk about how to build Docker images and push it to the container registry, or you can use existing images and you can tag it to the registry, and you can push it to the Docker container registry in GitLab. And we will also see like there are options in GitLab where you can configure housekeeping settings, like this container registry images if you don't want to keep it for more time, because it may use much of space of your GitLab. So my understanding is that GitLab gives around like 10 GB of space. I'm not exactly sure, but it's a free, the GitLab Container Registry is free for and open for all. but I think there is some software settings, like you can have 10 GB of image size or something like that. So we will see, like, all these things in the actual demo. So before I get into the demo, I would request you, like, if you're new to my channel or if you haven't subscribed to my channel, click on the subscribe button. Also like my videos, share and comment. Let's get into the actual demo. So if you have seen, like, GitLab, we have created a lot of projects before. So similar, like, every project, if you create in GitLab, for example, this is a new project I just created for this tutorial. So it's an example project. So whenever you go to your project, on the left side you will see all these settings where we have seen the CI/CD for creating pipeline. Similar way, you will have something called packages and repository. So we are not going to talk about package here. We are going to only talk about container registry. So if you click on that, so you should be able to see if you have any container registry uploaded here and the image is available. So for now we don't have any image available here. So this container registry is associated with all project. Okay, so whenever you can the benefit is, like, in the project, if you have any content, like you need to build those application as an image or something, you can default use this container registry, upload your image, then push it, pull it, all those things you can do it easily. So now, in case if you don't see this container registry option, you go to settings and you have packages and registries. So here, if you see, not here. Yeah, I was in the wrong place. So this is more of your housekeeping. So what you need to do is, like, if you don't see the container registry, go to your project settings and general, and you will have the option for visibility, project features and permission. You expand this. So here, if you see, you will be able to see what kind of project, what all settings are enabled. So if you scroll down, you can see for container registry. So if this option is not enabled, then you will not be able to see the container registry over here. So that you can check. By default, it should be enabled. So in case if you are using a locally hosted GitLab or something, then you'll have to ask your administrator to make those changes. Okay. So now let's coming back to our project. So if you see, we don't have any registry available now, right? Now let's talk about how to create image in Docker and how to push that to this GitLab container registry. So as I said, the benefit of this, like when we use our GitLab CI CD pipeline, for example, a Node.js application, you have your Docker file, you can use that to build a new image in Node, which you can, you don't have to push it to Docker Hub, you can push it directly to the GitLab itself, then you can use that to your next stage, and it can continue like that. So let's start with a simple image. So I have an image for Alpine. Okay, so rather than creating a new image from a Docker file, let me show you, like, let me tag this image or retag it. So I'm using Docker tag, and I'm going to tag Alpine, okay, through our Docker GitLab registry name. Okay, so how that registry name should be, you'll have to give, in Docker Hub, you don't have to specifically give any name for your container registry. Because by default, if you give a name of a Docker image, it will go and check in the Docker Hub. But this is not a Docker Hub, this is a GitLab image registry, so we have to specifically mention our registry name as we have shown in our local registry. Now if you come to this container registry itself, it show you default commands, like how to log into our container registry. So this should be registry.gitlab.com, right? And then after that, it should be your ID or your GitLab account. Then it should have your project name. Okay, and after that, you can give your image name as well. If you don't want it, you can give it like this as well. So what I will do is I will copy this. Okay, and I also will give our name as Alpine GitLab, and I will call the tag as test. Okay, so this should be the whole location where you're going to tag this. So usually in GitLab Docker Hub also, if you are pushing to your Docker Hub account, you should give your account name, right? So similarly, you can consider this is your account name and this should be your image name and the tag. So let's run this. So you can see now you have the image created here, right? So it should be this one. Okay, so let me clear out the screen. Now what we need to do is, if you use Docker login, by default this will go to your Docker Hub login. So if you just give Docker login, it will log into your Docker Hub. So you need to specifically mention, I want to log into the GitLab container registry. So for that, as the command mentioned here, you need to mention registry.gitlab.com. So you can just run that Docker login GitLab registry.com, then you can run it. It will authenticate with existing credentials. Since I already had my logged in before, it's logging in automatically. Let me remove those accounts first. So I have just removed this my previous cached login details, and I'm just going to run the Docker login again. Now if you see, when I run, it's asking for a username, so you can give a username. So I don't want to log in with the username and password. Okay, so you can type your GitLab username, and then it'll ask you for password. You can type that and you can log in with that. So then using that, what I want to do is I want to use a access token. So what you need to do is you need to go to your GitLab page. Okay, not on the project. You need to go to your GitLab. You need to click on edit profile. Okay, then on the left side you'll have a option called access token. So here you can give a token name. Okay, if you see, I already have a token here, okay, which is already created, and I have given an expiry date. So a similar way, what you can do is you can give a token name. So let me type test, and you can give an expiry date. So I will give it for today itself. And when you create a token, what you need to be very careful is, if you want to use that for your Docker container registry, the GitLab container registry, you should have this permission given, like read registry and write registry. Then only you can push the images to the container registry and you can read it. Okay, so these settings is not needed for this action. For if you are using this token for other purpose like read repository, write repository, you need to give the desired permission as well. So once you create a token, you need to be very careful that you just need to copy this value. Okay, because once you refresh, you will not be able to get this value again. So as soon as you see this, you need to copy this and keep it somewhere safe. Otherwise, if you refresh this page, or if you just come out of this page, you have lost that token. You can only see there is a token available, and you can revoke this token, but you will not be able to get that token ID once you refresh this page. So just make sure that once you create a token, you keep that. Okay, so we have created the token. Now what I want to do is I want to log in with the token. So for logging in that, you need to use this command. So you have to use Docker login and the registry gitlab.com and -u and give your account name. So in my case, this is my GitLab account, and you have to give a -p, and then you have to paste the token. So let me paste my token and I will enter it, so it will log in. So just run the token and it will log into the page. Okay, so now you can see it has successfully logged in. So you can use this method, and don't share this token with anyone. I will be revoking this token as soon as we completed this tutorial. So don't share that. So it's for your own purpose to push images and read images. So now what we have is we have a Docker image in this we just tagged, right? So now what we need to do is we need to push this Docker image to our container registry, right? So Docker push, and you need to paste this and the tag. So let me run that. So now you can see it's pushing the image to the container registry. So let's just wait for this to be completed. Depending upon the size of your image, it may take some time. Okay, I think it's already done. So I will just go here, and I will just refresh this container registry. Now you can see we already got this registry uploaded here, right? And you have this test as a tag. So now what you can do is you can just click on this one to copy, the image. So let me clear out the screen. Let me remove the this image first. So I will remove Docker RMI, and I'm going to force it. This if there is something used, or I'll just run this. So it's done. So if I go to Docker images, you don't see that image anymore, right? So you come here, you click this one, and you use Docker pull and paste this. So you have this whole location of your image with the tag. So you just run this. So it's pulling the image from the GitLab container registry now. So if I see Docker images, you can see the image is back, right? So that's pretty simple now, right? So you just have to push the image to the GitLab container registry. It's similar to like what a Docker Hub. Now let's see how the same thing we can do it with the Docker file as well. So let me remove this image first, and let me remove this one. Okay, so that is done. Now if I see, I have a file called Docker file. Okay, so this file is a simple Alpine file, which is installing a MySQL client, and it's just creating an entry point. That's all. So what you can do is rather than tagging the existing image, you are creating your own image using your for a application using a Docker file. What you need to do is you need to use Docker build, and you need to give the -t tag, and similar way how we have given the whole name of the GitLab container registry with the image name and the tag and the location of the Docker file. So I'm going to give this name. It's the same gitlab.com, and this my account, and the project name, and Alpine GitLab is the image, the same name I'm going to give, but I'm going to give a tag as test1, and I'm going to give the location, which is in the current folder. So I'm going to give a dot. Okay, so let me run it. Now you can see it's trying to create the image, so it will use the Alpine latest image. So it's pulling that Alpine image first, then it's create the container. Sorry, it will create the image for using the Docker file. So let's wait for this to complete. Okay, so let me see. Now you can see we have a new image for tag test1, right? Now if you want to push this again, we need to log in. Since I already logged into the GitLab container registry, I don't need to log in again. So I will use Docker push, and this should be one, and it should be test1. Okay, so let's push that. So you can see it's started pushing the new image as well. So that image is also pushed. Now if I go back to your container registry, and if you refresh it, you can see there is one more tag, right? So if you go to your container registry, you have one registry or another, but there are two tags. So you can create multiple tags, like if you want to create test images, you want to have development images, you want to have production images. So you can have different tags based on that. And if you want to delete this images, you just delete it from here. Okay, and it should be gone. Now you can see one is gone, and if I delete this one as well, you can delete it. And if you want to delete the whole container registry, this repository, you can just delete from here as well. Okay, so just delete that, the whole container registry as well. So that is also done. Now the other purpose which I wanted to show you, like if you go to the settings where I showed you in the initial time, like when we were searching for how to enable a container, so we go to this setting. But if you see, this option is for cleanup images tag. So there are cases like if you're using your default GitLab CI CD pipeline, whenever there is a change in the pipeline, change in the project, it will keep building your images again. So that will add up more space into the GitLab, and that will use a lot of space in the registry. So in order to save space, you can have these settings enabled. So cleanup image tag currently disabled, you can enable it, and you can do some routine cleanup activities, like you can run it every day, and you can keep some settings, like I want to keep only the 5 tags. So I don't want the old images to be kept, so I can keep something like, let's keep only the latest 5 images. Or you can keep other options, like remove these tags which are more than 90 days or 7 days. So you can keep these settings. So by default, if there are more images getting created, it will clean up automatically in the GitLab cleanup housekeeping activities itself. So that's another option I wanted to show you. So that is also very beneficial. You can go to settings and package and repository. You should be able to see that, right? And we also seen like settings in general and visibility. Like if you don't see the container registry, you need to enable that over here. Okay. So that is all. I think we covered all the topics for that. Now, if you want to log out from the container registry, you just log out. Okay. So now it's logging off. So as I show, like once you log in, it will save those in the cache. So that is under the JSON.config file. So that you can delete it if you have those configurations saved there as well. And in this tutorial, we are going to see how we can make use of GitLab CI CD pipeline to push the Docker image to container registry. So in our previous tutorial of GitLab, we have spoke about GitLab container registry. So we have seen how we can create our Docker images and push it to the GitLab container registry rather than using Docker Hub, right? So now in this topic, what we are going to do is we are going to automate that. So we'll have a GitLab CI CD pipeline to create our Docker image, and it will be pushed to the container registry. So what it will be like, you have a commit, or you'll have your app in the GitLab repository. So for this, we are going to use a Node.js applications, and you'll have a GitLab CI CD pipeline which will use that repository, and we will build the image, and we will doing the build on a Docker GitLab runner. So we'll be using a GitLab runner. We are going to use two stages here, one using the shared runner, and we will also see how we can use a specific runner which we will install it on a Linux machine, and which will have a Docker also, and we will see how we can run this job on a specific runner using Docker container, and also we will see how that can be pushed into our GitLab container registry. So in running this Docker container in a GitLab runner, there is also a concept like Docker in Docker. So we are going to use that as well in this topic, so we can easily run our job. So we'll use this Docker in Docker concept in the shared runner, so that it can create a Docker container, and we will run the Docker commands inside that, and we will create our Docker image, and it will be pushed to our GitLab container registry. So the whole process, we are going to use a Node.js application, because you will know how to build your Docker image for Node.js using this, and in the upcoming tutorial we will use this concept into using the deployment of our Node.js application as well. So one of the key parameter what you need to understand in this topic is like authenticating with the container registry. So like in Docker Hub, you use Docker login, and we need to give our username and password for Docker Hub, right? Similar way, like in the GitLab container registry, there are a few different ways. In the previous tutorial, we have seen how we can create our personal token, right? And using that username and password, you can log in, username and the personal token, you can log into the container registry. So in this tutorial, we will see different ways, but the easiest way is like using the CICD variable called CI registry user. So this is a default variable in GitLab, which can be easily used, because in every project it will create a CI registry user and a specific password for that, and the CI registry is the respective repository or container registry for that project. So you can use this default variable. So by default it will use that and log in, so that will applicable for that job alone. So we will use that, and also there is another option called CI job token. So that also use a default variable like a CI job user and CI job token, and the CI registry is the container registry for that project. So this is the one which we spoke like a personal token. This one also we can use. We can create a personal token for that your account, and you can use that. You can use the username, and you can use that personal token to log into the CI registry, which is the container registry. So we will use the first option, which is the CI registry user and CI registry password to log into the container registry, and pushing into that. So before I get into the actual demo, I would request you, like, if you have not subscribed to my channel, or if you are new to my channel, kindly click on the subscribe button and also like my videos, share and comment. So let's get started. So I'm in one of my project called Node app test, okay, and I have the files. So the Node.js, you'll have package.json, we'll have some files. So here in my case it's the index.js, and I have a Docker file which is written to build our Node.js application. So these things I'm not going to explain, these are already covered in my previous tutorial. So if you're not sure how to write Docker file for a Node.js application, please have a look on my previous tutorials, okay. And we also have Docker ignores to ignore some of the files, and this test is for testing the Node.js application. So what we want to do is we want to containerize or Dockerize this application, and we want to push that into your container registry. So for each project, that there is a container registry which can store your images, right? So like a Docker hub, so you can use this for pushing your image, and which can be used for deployment as well. So what we are going to do is we are going to create a pipeline first. So for that you need to create a GitlabCICD file, and let me show you how to write the pipeline. Let me open the Visual Studio Code. So I already written this pipeline code. So now if you see, I'm using an image called Docker, okay. So I'm using a Docker image because I don't want to use install Docker on a Linux machine and then use that. So in GitLab, a shared runner, it is easy, like you just use some of the runner which have a Docker, and I'm going to use an image for Docker itself, and I'm going to define a service called not Docker in Docker, so that we can run all these commands inside the Docker image or Docker container, okay. So the stage that I'm going to have only single stage called build, and the problem is, like, if you split these stages into different stages, each stage will not run on the same container, so then it will not happen correctly. So it has to be combined all together so that the whole thing can run on the same container, and it can finish, and it can push it, and it can log out, okay. So this is a variable I'm just going to set. It's not mandatory, you can set it directly here itself, the name. So I'm just setting a container registry name, container image name. So it's going to be the registry, because it has to be this one, because like when we pushing to the container registry, you need to give your account GitLab slash and your account name slash right, and the image name. So then only it can push, otherwise it like in Docker Hub also you have to give your username slash and the image, right? So we'll see what will get the outputs, and the latest I'm hard coding a latest one. You can have use like test, or you can use anything. You can also use some variable here, so every time when you build image, it can change the values, okay. So that we will see in the tutorial for how to deploy your Node.js application. This is more of about, I want to show you how to create a image and then push it. So Docker login, we spoke, like we'll use these variables like CI registry user and password, and the CI registry is for the container registry name. So these are standard variables in GitLab which you can easily use, okay. And this one is the variable I have just set it, and we are going to run it Docker file on the home location, and we are going to push it the image Docker push, which will pushing to the CI registry, which is the container registry, and will log out. So that should be the overall process. So let me just copy this. So I have copied this content into the GitlabCI.yaml, so you can see we are copying those content, okay. So it's a pretty simple. I will give this link so you can make use of this link as well. So that's all for this GitlabCI YAML. You can just go to your pipelines, and since I already submitted, I will just run the pipeline so it can start the pipeline on the master branch, okay. So you can see it started building. So you can see it's running Docker with the image Docker, right? So let's wait. This may take some time, because depending upon the image for Node.js, it's almost like 1 GB of image. It has to build the Docker image, then it has to push it to the container registry as well, right? So it has to go through the whole process. So let's wait. So you can see it's trying to pull the image, right? So it's trying to build the image. So it has already logged in with our CI registry user password, right? Now it's building the image using, you know, the Docker file. So you can see it's running the Docker file commands. So you can see now it has completed the image creation, right? And you can see it's registry.gitlab.com and the account and the image name and latest, right? Now it's pushing to the Docker container registry, and then it's logging out. So it's the whole process is completed. Now if you go to your container registry, you should have the image over here, right? You can see it's the latest tag. So that's a simple process regarding the building the image and pushing into the container registry. Now what we have done is here we have used the runner, which is a shared runner, right? So that's why it was running on this runner. So I'm just going to disable this, and I'm going to create a specific runner now. Okay, so for that I'm using this machine, which on this I have already Docker installed. Okay, and I need to install the GitLab runner on this machine. So in order to run the GitLab runner on the Linux machine, I already shared this tutorial, like how to set up GitLab runner on a Linux machine. So these are some commands. So if you just run it will download the runner, then we have to install it. So I'm just quickly going through it. So if you want to have a detailed tutorial on that, just have a look on my tutorial for that. But anyhow, I will give all these links in the video description, so you can use this to download and install the runner. So that is downloaded, so now you have to run this command. Okay, so these are you need to add the GitLab runner. So go to this folder where you'll be able to see the GitLab runner. So let's install the GitLab runner. Okay, so it's installed. Let's start the runner as well. Okay, now we have started the runner. Now we need to register the runner. So in order to register, you need to run GitLab runner register, and it will ask you to enter the GitLab URL. So we need to run gitlab.com. If you're running your own instance, you have to enter based on that. You need to go to your project, and you need to copy this token. You need to run the token, and you need to give a description. I'm going to call this as my Linux runner, and you need to give a tags. And tag is something which is very important, because we'll use this tag in our pipeline now, because otherwise the pipeline will not know on which runner it has to run. So I'm going to use Docker and shell here. Okay, and now we need to have the executor. So like every runner have an executor. So here we are going to use the shell executor. Okay, so we are not using Docker plus machine or Docker, because this is a shell executor which we are using. So we can see the runner is configured properly. Now if I go back here and refresh, and if I go back to the runners, you should be able to see the runner is up and green, right? So before we do that, we also need to enable our Docker. So I'm going to use systemctl status Docker. You can see it's not running, so I'm going to start it. So if I check again, now you have this Docker running, right? And also what we need to do is our GitLab runner need access for our Docker sock. So let me also add the GitLab runner as the permission for the Docker group. So basically when you install Docker, you'll have a group called Docker. Okay, if you don't have it, you need to create that, and you need to add our GitLab runner into the group. Otherwise, when you run the Docker commands, it will give you a message like it's not able to access the Docker sock. And let me also use restart Docker. So Docker is running. So I think we are ready with our Docker GitLab runner. So now it's time for going back to our pipeline. So if you see, I have written a different kind of pipeline here. So we can run the same, this pipeline as well. This will also run on this machine, but I just want to show you like we can do it in a separate stages as well, because now we are running on a shared runner, which is our specific runner. So all these jobs will run on the same machine. It's not like shared runner, like each job will run on a different machines. So because of this, you can run in different stages as well, and I will show you like each stage what it happens. So now if you see, we have stages called login, build, right, push, logout, and I'm setting a variable like container image test, and in the login job, so it should be running on the stage login, and we are using the tag as Docker, so that when you run this pipeline, it will detect the runner which is tagged with Docker, which will be our specific runner. So if you don't tag it, then it will not run. It will be on pending stage, because it will not be able to find the runner which it can run. Okay, so now this command, it's the same command which we are using to login, and the build, we are using the same command again to build. Okay, so this time the image will be like with test, not as a latest. And pushing the Docker, I'm not running the push command. So if you use the push, what will happen is it will push to the Docker container registry. But because of the size of the image, and also it takes a lot of time because of the network connectivity to push it to the container registry, I'm just skipping this stage. But in your case, you can put it, so you can put this part over here. Just copy Docker push and put it here. Just like this. You can just change this to Docker push, so it will push the image to the container registry. But I'm just skipping that one alone, so I'm just putting a echo thing, and the last stage will be Docker logout. So I will copy this content. Okay, so let me go back to our editor, and I will just change the pipeline. Okay, so let me change this to this pipeline script. So we have a different pipeline, and let me commit, and you can see the pipeline is started. So let's wait. So you can see the pipeline has started. It has 4 stages now. Okay, the login job, let me see, it has failed somehow. Yep, the problem here it is now it has failed because it's not able to fetch, and the git command not found. So what you need to do is you need to use yum install git, because you need to have git to run the whole process, because it has to download the or clone the repository to this machine. So git is also required, so you need to install git. So let me wait for the installation to be completed. So git is installed now. So let me also show you, like if I go to Docker images, we don't have an image at all. So now what will happen is when we run the pipeline, it will download the node base image, it will build the image, and you should be able to see a image with the new tag. Okay, so let's run this again. So let me go back to the pipeline, and let me run the pipeline again. So let's see the status, it's running. So now you see the first job is completed. It has logged into the container registry, so it succeeded, right? So let's go back to the job. So we have let's go back to the pipeline. Let's see what's the second stage. Okay, unfortunately it has failed this stage as well. So let's see. So I'm not sure why it has failed. Let me run it again. So we'll wait for this time and see. So looks like this time it's running, so you can see it started building the container. So basically, I found some issue with the git, so it's trying to git fetch rather than using git clone. So I had to make a small change in the setting for that as well. So I'll show you once this is completed. So it's trying to pull the node image, so we should be able to see once this is pulled, the image is also available in our GitLab runner. Now it started building the image. So if I go back to the runner and if I see Docker images, you can see node is pulled and it's building the other image. So we'll see this none will be changed soon. So I will just wait for the building to be completed on the job. Good, looks like our job is completed, and you can see it has created a image called registry.gitlab.com and my account, and also the node app test. So let's see what we have it here. So now you see we can see this image, right, and the tag is test. So that's what we built here. So let's go back to our pipeline. Now you can see this whole pipeline is completed because we had a push job and we had a logout job as well. So the push job, as I mentioned, I did not put the option to push it to the container registry. So if you put it the container registry, it will push it to container registry as well. Okay, so it may take time based on how much size of your image it has to push from your specific runner to the container registry. So the process is same. You can just use the two method. One is this one, you can use Docker in Docker, or you can use a shared runner where you don't have to use Docker in Docker. You can use simple method of different job if you want to split, or you can use this same method as well in here as well. Okay, so you can use that as well. It will also work. You can combine without Docker in Docker as well here. So this is one of the way you can use our shared runner. So I wanted to show you like how you can use shared runner as well in this tutorial. This will be a continuation of our GitLab CI CD tutorial for beginners. So if you have seen my previous tutorial, we have gone through multiple lectures on GitLab CI CD, like how to set up runners, how to build GitLab pipeline to build your image and push it to GitLab container registry. So this will be a continuation of that, and in this tutorial what we will see is like how to set up your GitLab CI CD pipeline for a Node.js application. So when we talk about CI CD pipeline, it will be end-to-end pipeline, starting from how to build your application, test it, release it, and then even for the deployment into an actual production environment. So that will be our complete pipeline for this. So let's discuss on a pictorial way like how our pipeline would look like. Okay, so for example, if you are a developer, you will have your code put it into your GitLab. So we will show you like a sample Node.js project which I'll be putting into the GitLab our repository. And from GitLab we will use our CI/CD pipeline. So whenever you make changes in your application, it will build your pipeline. So we will write the complete pipeline code. So I will show you, and I will share that as well in the link so you can download that. And what we will do, like we already seen in our previous tutorial, how to build our image using Docker build command, right? So we'll be using a GitLab runner for that, and basically it is going to be Node.js application, and we are going to use Docker in Docker concept, which we already discussed, and how that will make use of the Docker in Docker concept to build your image and pushing into the container registry. So we'll push that into the GitLab container registry. So till this point you already aware in our previous tutorial. So what we will do from here is like we will have a test. So we will test our Node.js application. So we create the image. So we will, once we create the image, we will test our Node.js applications. So once we test it, if it passed the test, then we will deploy our application to our Docker container. So that means using our image, we will run our application as a container. So these are all will be a pipeline script. So once you click or make some changes in your code, this will automatically happen, and your application will be running as a Docker container. So we will see all those things. So let's discuss a little bit more like what will be the each individual step which we'll be doing it in as part of our continuous deployment of our Node.js application. So what as I said, what we will do is first we will have a Node.js application in our GitLab repository. So we will commit that. So I already have it, so I will show you, so you can make use of your application for that. And we will build the Docker image for your Node.js application. And once we build it, we will push the Docker image to your GitLab container registry. And this image we will mark it as a test image. Okay, so it's not the actual release image, so we can name it something test or some variables. Then we will mark this image as a test image. Then we will run a test on the Node.js application using this test image. If the image this application is passing the test, then we will rename, or we will tag the test image as a release image and push that into the container registry again. So then we'll have two images, one for test and once the release, because once the test is passed, then that will convert into a release image. So once we have the release image, means like we have a standard or application which can be deployed into your production environment. Then we will use Docker commands to deploy our application as a Docker container using this release image. So we'll have 4 stages in our pipeline. One will be for build, one will be for test, and one will be for release, and one for deploy. So there will be 4 stages, and there will be 4 jobs running. So I will show you the complete pipeline script, how to write that, and I will also share that so you can make use of that. And once we deploy it, I'll show you like where the container will be running, because we'll have our own server running for running this container, and rest of other action we will use our shared runner for that. So before I get into the actual demo of the process, I would request you, like if you're new to my channel or if you haven't clicked on the subscribe button, please click on the subscribe button. Also click on the bell icon. So also like my video, share and comment. So let's get started. So if you see, I have a Node.js application. So if you see the index.js, it's pretty simple. There are 2 routes, one for /build. So there is no home page which I have put. So it's if you go to your application and /world, you get a response like response hello world. And if it goes /ready, it should be like this, and it's running on the port 3000. And if you see, there is also one test running. So because if you see, I have a test.js, and that will check the test. So it's using super test and mocha. So it's all defined in our package.json. So if you see the package.json, you have npm start for index.js and npm test for running this test.js file, right? So that's how the whole configuration is there. And you can also check the Docker file. We also have a Docker file. Now if you see the Docker file, this also we have discussed in our lot of tutorials, like how to write your Docker file for your Node.js. So you have a base image, and we are copying making the default directory, and we are copying the package.json to this file, and we are installing the npm, and we are copying the rest of the other files, and then we are exposing the port, and we are starting the index.js. So that's the overall npm file, Docker file as well. So if you don't know, you have to check my previous tutorial on that. So that's the overall application what we have it. And we have this gitlab.yaml file. So before that, let me show you we have one runner setup. So if you see, there is a runner which is active. This runner, we will use it for running our Docker container. Rest of things will have in our shared runners. Okay, so that's how it will be. So now this is the machine which I have set up as a runner, and if you see docker ps-hey, I don't have any containers running. So the deployment will happen on this machine. So once we run the whole pipeline, the deployment will have a container running, and we should be able to access our application using the IP address or the host name for this machine. Okay, so let's talk about the whole CICD pipeline .yaml file which we'll use it in the GitLab. So where we'll have this .gitlab ci-ci.yaml file. Okay. So what we will do is, like, let's go through the end-to-end process, so you can write, or use the same method to build your and deploy your application. So now if you see, we are starting with the base image, which is a Docker image. This is because we are using Docker in Docker concept, and we are defining the service, right? And as I said, we have 4 stages: one for build, one for test, and one for release, and one for deploy. And we are setting this variable, so we are using a test image. As I told, like, we'll have 2 images, one for test and one for release. So the test image, we are using the variable like container registry name and tag, commit reference slug. And if you see the release image, we are using the same container registry image, and the latest. So that's how we will use it as variable. If you want to use a different variable, that's also fine. Okay, but this is a default variable from GitLab, which will use the registry values for that. And we already spoke about these variables. For example, we spoke about, like, to log into your GitLab container registry, you need to have a user ID and password for authentication, right? So rather than using hardcore password, we are using the registry variables, right? For the container registry variable, this is the CI registry user and password, and this CI registry. And this will be created in every job, so you don't have to make a note of this, because this will take default from your job. So we spoke about different ways you can do it. So this is one of the way you can write your script. So why we are giving this before script means this happens on before every job. So otherwise, if you want to run it within job, you'll have to put it inside the job. Now if you see, the first job is for us is build, and we are also defining the stage as build. Okay, so this stage comes from here, which stage it is, and the script is like we are going to build our application. So we are going to build, and we are going to name it as test image, and we are using the Docker file from our source location, and we are going to push the test image using Docker push, right? So we can see this Docker push contain. So this will be pushing our image to our GitLab container registry for this project. So now once this is done, we are going to test our application. So we are going to use a job as test. You can name it anything, but just I'm using test, and the stage will be test. And the commands what we have to do is, now we have to make use of this test image. So I'm going to pull this test image, then I'm going to run the command docker run and image, and I'm going to call the variables, which is our argument. So I'm going to use npm test, because this I have already defined in my application what npm test will do, right? I have already shown you, like, there is a test.js file, and we have already defined what test inside the package.json, right? So if this is passing this test phase, then it will go to release image. So I'm going to call this job as release image, and I'm going to put it under the stage release. And in this stage, what we will do is we'll pull the test image, and we are going to tag it as release image, because now it has passed the test. If it has failed the test, it will stop it there itself. Now we are going to rename or tag the test image as a release image, and then we're going to push it to the container registry again. So now we'll have a release image available in the container registry, which is ready for deploy. And in the deployment job, I'm going to put it on the stage deploy, and I'm going to give the tag, because my GitLab runner or the local server, which is tagged under local Docker, where we will be running this commands to run our application. So if you have given different tags, you can use that, okay? Because if you run the shared runners, we will not be able to get our application. It will finish this job, but to access our application, I'm using my local server. Now here, what we are going to do is we are going to pull our release image, and I'm going to run the docker run command with the -d detach mode and -p, which is the port which I'm mapping into the port 3000 for application from the host and also from the image. Now the container image which I'm going to use is the release image, which is already tested and pushed it to our GitLab registry. So this is the overall process. So it will be 4 stages where we are going to run our applications. Now if I go back to my GitLab project, now if you see, I already run it once and I have 4 stages, all are passed. Okay, so now let me run it again. So let me go back to the editor. So I don't have any changes to be done, so I will go just run the pipeline again. So now we can see the pipeline has started. So it's starting with the build phase. So if you go to the build, you should be able to see what it does. It's using the Docker in Docker image, right? So it uses that concept. The whole process makes some time depending upon the image it has to pull, because if you see it's pulling and building our image, you can see it is pulling the image and it's logging into the container registry, then it's building our image, then it will be pushed. So you can see it's doing the whole process step by step. So it may take some time based on how much times it takes to build the image and pushing into the container registry. Now we can see this job has succeeded and it has pushed the image to the Docker container registry. So let me go back to the pipeline. Let's see, it's running the second stage now. So we can go to the test and it will use the image which we pushed to container registry to run the test. As you can see, the npm test has been also job succeeded. So what it has done, it has pulled the test image and it has run the docker run npm test. So let's go back to our pipeline and we have our third stage running, so which should be for release image. So let's go back and check that. As you can see, the third stage is also succeeded. So what it has done is it has retagged the test image as release image and it has pushed to the container registry. So let's go back to our final stage, which should be on deploying it. So that should be our final stage where it has to deploy our application. So now we can see it's going to run it on our machine. So you can see that is also succeeded. So we can see whole process is done. And let me go back to this machine. So if I go back to docker-ps, yep, now you can see we have our image container running. And if I go back to Docker images, you should be able to see our latest image over here just 4 minutes ago, right? So our container is also running of our application. So what we can do is we just need to access this machine, access this application using our IP address and the port 3000. So let me use this IP address and let me go to a browser. If I go to the IP address with the port 3000 and /will, you can see the response we are getting hello world, right? And we have one more route which is /ready, and if you see, we are getting it works. So our application is running fine now, and because it's running it as a Docker container now, right? So you can see docker-ps, it's running using our image which we deployed into our application Docker container registry. So that's the overall CI/CD deployment process. So if you see the pipeline file which we have created, it's not that complicated, it's pretty simple, but you need to understand the concept what we have done. So how to build your image, how to push that to container registry, how to test your application, then if you want to build it as a release image, and then how to deploy it as a Docker container. So this is the way we are doing as a Docker container. If you want to know like how to build your application without as a Docker, that is also possible. You can test your application, you can then copy the contents into a server, and then you can run it from there as well. So that is also possible. If you want that to be created as a video, I will do that as well. You can give your feedback on the video or in the YouTube, so you can give a comment section, you can give your request, then I can create a video based on that as well. Since most of our application now running as a Docker, I thought this will be helpful for you guys. So we'll be starting this session, which will be basics of Git. So we'll be talking more about Git, GitHub, GitLab. So what is the difference between Git, GitHub, GitLab, those things. Okay. So let's start with Git, GitHub, and GitLab, because there are a lot of misconception between GitHub, GitLab, and Git. So some people think all are same. Some doesn't know what's the difference. So let's talk about that first. Then we will get into more about the in depth of what is Git, how Git works. So to start with, if you have any confusion or if you don't know what is Git, so Git is an open source distributed version control software. Okay, and why Git is used is because that helps you to make or track the changes on a file, and that change can be stored into a remote repository. What does it means? Like if you have a software development, or if you are making a file, a code, and if you want to keep a track of the changes, like who has changed, what has been changed, when has been changed, Git is the best option for that. There are other tools as well, but Git is one of the tool for version control, and very popular one. So that is one of the good option for you. Okay, now you may think then what is GitHub or GitLab, right? So whereas GitHub is a repository hosting service, okay, for hosting these Git repositories. So what does it mean? Like you have repositories for Git from your local machine. You can store it on a remote repository, which it can be on cloud or it can be your own hosted servers. Okay, so GitHub offers both a free service and paid service. And one of the benefit of GitHub is like when storing these repositories on GitHub, you can easily collaborate with other GitHub users on your project, and that will help. Like some of the features are developed by some other persons, and you can have multiple persons working on the same repository, and that help you to easily develop some features for your project or your code. Now what is GitLab? So GitLab is also a repository hosting service similar to GitHub. Okay, so it's not a difference like GitHub or GitLab is have a major difference. Both are repository hosting service, but from different way of doing it. Okay, and the benefit or the feature in GitLab is more focused on DevOps or CICD features. Okay, which does not have it on GitHub. But GitHub is more popular because it have more repositories, more users to collaborate. GitLab is not to that extent, but you have more features on DevOps, CI/CD, how to automate your build, test, deploy to your projects. So that is a benefit of GitLab. So I will get in depth on the topics, but before that I have a request. Like kindly click on the subscribe button, support me to get more support from your end. Okay, and I also would like to request you to like this video, share and comment. Okay, so that will help for giving a thumbs up from your end, like a motivation for me and other people who can get support from watching these videos. Okay, now so let's get into a little bit more on this. So what we discussed, just in a recap. So what is the difference between Git, GitHub and GitLab? So in simple word, Git is a version control system or software which will be installed locally on your machine, whereas GitHub is a popular Git repository hosting service, and it's a collaboration platform. And whereas GitLab, it's a repository hosting service, again just similar to GitHub with more CI/CD or DevOps features. Okay. Now, in order to understand the reason why we have to use Git or GitHub or GitLab, you need to understand a little bit of the software development lifecycle. So in software development lifecycle, you have different phases like requirement, design, coding, or building. That's the main place where you will have the major code or the products is developed. Then you will have testing, and then it goes to the deployment or going to the market, right? So what happens is in this process, most developers simultaneously do the part of the code, right? And they make the modification on the code, and that will make get into some conflict with each other, and that's create a lot of bugs in the software. So that is the where with these repository managers like GitHub or GitLab becomes very useful. Okay, so we will see why it's useful. Okay, I will go to the next slides where I'll be talking about how normally a developer use the code and what is the benefit of using GitHub or GitLab or other tools like Bitbucket or SVN Subversion, like that. Okay, so let's see why Git and Git for developer. So because if you are a developer or if you are an operational team or DevOps team, you should know like how Git is used by an actual development team. Okay, so now you have a product or you are doing a code, okay, like Java application or any other application where you'll be writing the code, and there may be developer 1 who will be doing a part of it, or developer 2, and there are multiple developers who are working on that code. And what happens is, because this code, everybody is trying to develop this code from their own part. They have versions of their own, like developer 1 will have his own version, 2 will have her own version, and the 3 will have his own versions. So the problem here is like now do you have different versions, and there will be a conflict now to merge all these things and bring up the actual product, because all of these people have their own code on their local machine. Okay, because they are keeping all the code on their machine, but they are trying to make all the changes from their perspective. So that is the problem without a source code or version control software. So that is why now we'll see how this GitHub or GitLab helps us. So using GitHub, GitHub and GitLab, because Git is a locally installed software, so which will help the track of these changes on the local machine as well. Okay, so now again to consider, you have a code or product, and you have a developer 1, right, and developer 2, and also developer 3. So and again, as we mentioned, they have their own versions if they try to make the changes on the code. But the difference is like now the source code or the actual base of the product is now stored on a remote repository, which is a GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket, or Subversion. And from that remote repository, what we usually do is we'll have a master branch where the actual code will be there, and you will have a branch. Now from that branch, these developers will use that code, and they will start editing or making their versions, and they will start making the changes. But before that, in the Git process, what we usually do is we will clone the master branch into the locally on your machine. And once you clone it, we will talk about all these command, the git clone or git initiation, how to create the repositories and everything. I'm not going to go on that topic here, okay, because I want to talk about more of basics and the concept in this tutorial. So once you clone, or once you create your Git repository on your locally on the machine, what will have, it will have two parts. One is the local repository, and the other one is a working directory. So once you start making the changes, all the changes happens in the working directory. So for example, this developer 3, he's making the changes in the code which has been cloned from the master branch, which happens in the working directory. And from the working directory, whatever the changes is in the staging area, so then you have to commit those changes that will go to the local repository. So once you make the changes in the local repository, you can push those changes into the master branch. So the master branch will get the actual code from the developer tree. So it has created a new version in the master branch. So previous one may be v1, now it have a v2. So the developer 2 can check out that version, and she can start working, or or she may have the old version and she would have a different version she developed, which she can push it back to the master branch. And it does not mean that always it has to be a master branch. What usually happens in the organization is like from the master branch you will create feature branches, and the developers will make the changes from the feature branch. You will create the local repository, you will make the changes, and you will push those back to the feature branch. So every developer will have their own feature branch, and from the feature branch it has to merge into the master branch, which will have a approval process, and that will be how it has been done. Okay, so that's the overall process will happen in the Git. So this will benefit is like you will have a complete picture of what changes has been done, each versions. Then you can merge each versions together to get the overall product. So there you can have the conflicts to be fixed, and you will have multiple versions. If you want to go back to the previous versions, all those things can be achieved using the GitHub and GitLab options. Okay, so Git is more of a local machine software, so where you'll have this commands which you will run it from local machine to push it to the GitHub or GitLab, or it can be Subversion or Bitbucket or any tools which you prefer to use it. But this topic we are talking more about Git. That's why I'm talking more about Git here. Okay. So this tutorial we are going to talk about GitLab. So this will be a GitLab tutorial for beginners, and this will be a separate tutorial, not a continuation of my previous GitLab CI tutorial where we spoke about GitLab CI CD. So this is a separate tutorial because a lot of people has asked me like how they can set up GitLab quickly on Docker. So what we are going to see in this tutorial is like if you know Docker, or if you have already worked with Docker, how easily you can set up a GitLab instance on Docker. So you don't have to use the SaaS version of GitLab. You can have your own GitLab instance where you can use it on Docker, and you can create your GitLab repositories. You can upload your code, you can create private public repositories, you can use it for CICD, and all those process you can do using your own GitLab instance. So if you see one of my previous tutorial, we have shown how to set up GitLab on a normal CentOS. Like you can do a basic installation also, but this will be much easier to start a GitLab instance using Docker quickly. And so before we get started on the actual setup on Docker using the commands and all those things, those who don't know what is GitLab, so basically if you want to understand GitLab, probably you also need to know Git, right? So I'm sure if you're a developer, an operational guy who has used on using version controlling of your code, definitely you have used Git or Subversion or some kind of version controlling system, right? So Git is an open source version controlling system which is commonly used, right? So where you will have use your code, right? You can use local repositories, you can have working stage, then you can upload it to remote repository, right? So I have a separate tutorial on Git, like how the overall process, like how you can clone the Git repositories, how you can create on the remote repositories, how you can commit your code changes, how you can push it. So all those things have been covered on my previous tutorial, which I can link into this video description, so you can check on what is Git, difference between Git, GitHub, GitLab, and all those things. So whereas GitLab is it's not just a repository for Git, because previously it may started with like a general Git repository where you can upload your code into a remote repository. So that how it was GitLab, but now GitLab has been more developed into a complete DevOps software. So if you go to gitlab.com, there itself you should see like it's a complete DevOps platform. They're not just talking like GitLab as a Git remote repository. So now GitLab is a complete software where you can use not only to just manage your code, you can plan your CI/CD pipeline, you can do a testing stage, you can package it, you have GitLab package, you can store your Docker images to the GitLab container registry, you can then you push it, you can release the packages, you have monitoring, you have a lot of things in the GitLab itself. So as per definition, you can see GitLab is the DevOps platform delivered as a single application. So it's a overall package now, but in a free version of GitLab, sign up, you may not get all benefits, but you can go for enterprise versions, or you can use paid versions of GitLab, some of the features. Then you should have the whole features. So I'm not going to talk more about that. So but this is what all about GitLab, and you can register GitLab using gitlab.com. You can register for a free account, and you can log in, and you can create your repository, you can push your code, and then you can create your CI/CD pipeline, and all those things. You can do it with the SaaS versions, because this is the SaaS version where you can use your internet. You can go to gitlab.com and you can create your account. Now what we are going to talk about in this tutorial is like how you can create the similar kind of GitLab instance on your local machine. You don't want to use the SaaS version, you want to have your own local instance for your enterprise, where you want to share with some of the people inside your own local network. So you don't want to share it as an open application, but you can use it for internet through internet as well, but you need to make some configuration so it's open through the internet. So what we are going to see is like how you can easily set up a GitLab instance using the Docker. So if you see, I've logged into one of my Docker machine where I have installed Docker. So you can see I have Docker installed on this machine, and if you don't know how to set up Docker, you need to refer my tutorials on Docker, how to set up on CentOS or Ubuntu or Windows. So there are different, even Mac you can set up a Docker. So there are all easy installation. You can use different method. I will link to the CentOS, how to install Docker on CentOS, on this video description, which you can refer, and you can set up your Docker. Now what I want to do is I want to create a Docker instance on this machine. So there are two ways you can do it. One is like you can simply run a Docker command, like docker run, and run the basic command, so it will create a container for GitLab, and we should be able to access GitLab. The other ways, you can use Docker Compose, like you can write your docker compose.yaml file, and then you can create your container. So once you run the Docker Compose, you should have your container running. So what we are going to do is we are going to start with a basic Docker command to create the instance for GitLab in Docker. Okay, so I have already written the command. Now you can see what we are going to use is docker run. Docker run will use to run your container, and I'm going to use detach. You can use / detach, or it can be just -d to run your container on the back end. So that's the detach mode. So I'm going to publish some ports, like you want to open the ports from the container to the local host. So there is a 443 for SSL and port 80 for normal connection, and publish 2222. So but in this case, since some machine the port may be used, so I'm going to use a different port here for from a local machine. From container it should be 22, and I'm going to give a name for the container, which would be GitLab. You can use any name, and I'm going to use the parameter like restart always. And I'm also going to use some volumes. So I'm going to use Docker managed volumes. So it's going to be gitlab_config, and it should be etc/gitlab, which will be the configuration for GitLab, and the logs for GitLab, it should be under var log GitLab, which is also mapped to a volume, and also the data, which should be var opt GitLab. And I'm also going to set some memory size. So I'm going to use 2 GB for this container. So basically, depending upon the configuration you have, if you give more memory, it's better. The system will be able to create the container much faster, and you should have better performing container and the GitLab instance. So if you don't have enough memory, you can set less than 2 GB as well, but I think it will take more time for the container to be set up and to access, which will be a little slower. So I would request you, like you give 4 GB or more than 2 GB, which would be good. And I'm going to use the image for GitLab, which should be GitLab-C, which is the community edition. If you are having enterprise edition, you can use EE as well. So what I'm going to use is I'm going to just copy this command, and I will go to the Docker machine, and I will paste this command here. So we have pasted the command like what we have spoke, like docker run, detach mode, publishing the ports, name of the container, restart always, and I'm using the volumes and memory size and the image. So I'm just running this command. So basically, if you don't have the image already downloaded on your machine, it will download the image, then it will create the container. So in my case, I already have the image, so it will create the container directly. So you can see it has given the container ID. Basically, in your case, if you don't have the image, it will take some time. It's almost like 1.1 GB of memory size, so it will take the whole memory to be used for the creation of the container. So now in my case, if you see, like, the port 443 is also allocated, so maybe I have to change the ports for all those things in the local, then we will use that. So I will change this one also to some other ports, and here also maybe I will change it to port 8080, so I can just change those, and I will just run this command again. Maybe in this case, I have a GitLab name which would be conflicting because it would have already tried to create a container. So let me see. So as I mentioned, like, it has given a conflict for GitLab because there is already one container running. So let me use, you can see there is a container. This is a different one. So you can see, like, there is a container for GitLab. So I want to remove that, docker rm, and I'm going to remove this container so I can use that name again. So I will just copy the commands again, and I will just paste that here, and I will run it. So now this time you can see it's trying to create the container, and I think it's just created the container as well. So now you can see the container is started. You can see the health, and it's starting, so it may take some time. So basically what you can do is you can use docker logs to check the what is happening actually in the container, because we created the container in the detached mode, so you want to see what is happening. So you can use docker logs -f and the container ID or the container name. So I will use GitLab. Now you can see it's doing a lot of process. So basically, it takes quite some time to create the whole GitLab instance. So maybe it takes 10-15 minutes. For me, it took around 10 to 15 minutes because, as I mentioned, at my system I have set only 2 GB. If you have more space, more RAM, I would say, like, if you put 4 GB, maybe it will take lesser than 10 minutes as well. So I will wait for this whole process to be completed so that the GitLab instance will be up and running. Now once the installation is completed or the Docker container is created, you can see, like, if you access your GitLab instance using your IP address and port 8080, because we configured our local host to 8080, but if you're using port 80, just use 80, or you just run the IP address, you should be able to get the GitLab instance. Now you see that it's the exactly the same instance, whether it's a SaaS version where you can use the open source gitlab.com free registration, or you can create your local instance using the Docker container what we are shown. So once you create it, you can access it using the IP address of the machine. Now in order to access this one, the username should be root. So the username should be root, and the password, the initial password, you need to use the command docker exec it gitlab, which will be the name of your container, and you need to grab the password. Or you can docker exec to your container and you can go to this location, etc gitlab initial root password. So there you should have the password stored for this GitLab instance. For me, in my case, this is the password. So in your case, it should be different password. So once you get that, you can paste that password here, and you can log in to the instance. So once you log in, you should get the basic page where you can see projects, right, where you can create new project. So what we have used is, like, as I mentioned, you need to use docker exec command to get the initial root password. You can get that and you can log in, and once you log in, you can change the password. You can see currently now it's root user. You can go to edit profile and you can change the password. So you can see it's all completely same as what your gitlab.com. This is running on my local instance. So that's the only difference. So you can do everything, what you want to do with this instance now. This is your own instance running on locally on your Docker container. You can create your projects, you can push your code, you can create your GitLab CI CD. So all those things, I have a complete playlist for GitLab CI CD tutorial, and you can follow those things to create your application deployment through using Docker Hub or GitLab Container Registry to save your Docker images. Then you can push it as a Docker container. So different ways you can do it. So that's the most easiest way to create your Docker instance using Docker container. Now what we can do is, now what we have seen is like using normal Docker run command, right? Now I also have put the details like how you can create using a Docker compose file. So it's almost a similar one, but you need to put the details into a different method. So here I'm going to create one service called web, and I'm going to use the same kind of content like GitLab image, which is GitLab-CE latest, and I'm going to give a container name and restart always, and the ports. So again here, if you want to map it to a different ports, you need to change the ports here, and based on what ports is not used on the machine, you can use that. And I'm going to map the volumes, which would be config, which is for etc GitLab, and logs and data. And I'm also going to set the memory size as 2 GB. As I mentioned, you can use more than 2 GB, because for me now, if you see, it took around 15 to 20 minutes to create a complete setup of GitLab to have it completely ready. So but if you have more memory, it may quickly complete the process, and you should have your GitLab instance ready. Okay, so the volumes, whatever we have used here, it has to be mapped in here, otherwise the Docker compose file will not be working. So what you can just do is, you just need to copy this content, and let me create a file. So you can just create a file called docker compose.yaml, and you can insert those contents what we have copied from the so don't worry, I will give all these details in my GitHub link, so I will link into this video description. You can just check those. So now we have a file called docker compose.yaml, so you should have that one ready now. So what you can simply do is, you should have Docker compose set up along with your Docker. So you can just use Docker compose up, and if you want to run it in detached mode, just run it in detached mode. So in our case, we cannot run it now because I already have a GitLab container running, and all these ports are used. So I need to change to a different container, and I have to change the ports as well. But you can just simply run this. It will do the same thing like what we have shown. It will create a container, and you should be able to access the GitLab using your IP address of the host. And basically whatever port you're mapping, you need to use that when you run the instance using your IP address. So it's port 80 means you can just run it. And also one more thing is, like, in case if the ports are blocked, you can use firewall commands to open those ports in your local machine. Otherwise you will not be able to access the GitLab instance using your web browser. So open those ports and just reboot your firewall, and I will give all those commands in the GitHub link, which I will link into this video description, so follow those. So in this tutorial, we have seen how to set up GitLab on Docker using Docker normal run command, and also using Docker compose. I hope it's an informative tutorial for you.
Version, or if you want your own instance of Git, install GitLab as you see in this tutorial. If you have not subscribed to my channel, kindly do so and provide your comments. Let's get started. Go to the web page about.gitlab.com/install, which have the official documentation on how to set up GitLab. For the installation, 4 GB of RAM is recommended. We are going to set up GitLab in CentOS. If you are using any other operating system, choose the same and follow the instructions. Great, the installation is completed. Now open the Git web page using the IP address of your host machine. It will direct you to the login page and will ask you to set a new password. Give a new password and log into the Git. You can check the settings and create new projects in GitLab. Upload your content in respective branch. We will be using Git in our upcoming videos on CICD. We will have Jenkins pull the code from Git and run the build jobs. I hope this tutorial is informative for you. Thank you for watching. Kindly subscribe to my channel and like the video.